Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Orla Callan. I'm from Innopharma College of Applied Sciences. So I'm here to talk to you today about how you can deliver your career goals to work within the pharmaceutical, medical device or food sectors. So I'll talk a little bit about who we are first, so many of you may not have heard of us before. A little bit around the food sectors and how buoyant they are currently in Ireland. And why Upskill. I'll talk about a range of our courses and we'll take some questions and answers at the end as well. So, as I said, in Innopharma, we're an award-winning education institute. We're also a technology company, so we actually develop, deliver and sell technologies to the pharmaceutical sectors worldwide, okay? So I suppose that's what makes us different than traditional education institutes. We have a lot of contact within the industry. We're aware of what's happening currently and in the future, and based on that, all of our programs are regularly updated to look at the current and future skills need of the sector. I'll give you a little bit of background. When we first started back in 2009, and back in 2009, the jobs market within the pharmaceutical sector was quite buoyant too. That was in kind of the solid dose, so making of kind of tablets, aspirin, that type of thing, okay? However, we were finding that within the sector, we had to go abroad to get people with particular skill sets. So even though we had really good caliber scientists and engineers graduating from Irish colleges, they didn't have the key skill sets to work within the sector. So we were going to countries like Spain to import people to work in jobs, and yet Irish graduates couldn't get jobs. So we put together our first program, which was a level 8 certificate in pharmaceutical and medical device manufacturing. That's a short 6-month program which we run in Dublin and a number of centres throughout Ireland, and is aimed at people who already have a degree, whether it's a level 7 or a level 8 degree in science or engineering. And it gives them a blend of understanding the pharmaceutical and medical device manufacturing sector, as well as business-led skills, and then the softer skills. So the previous speaker was talking about interview skills. There was already a session on CV skills. It's really, really important that apart from the technical professional skills, that you're also able to deliver those in interviews. So we work very closely with all our students on that. So our first course ran back in 2009. We took 100 unemployed scientists and engineers, and within 6 months of the program, 80% of them were working within the pharma sector. So we went on to develop our programs since then. Okay, so I'm happy to say that we have over 3,500 students now who have successfully graduated in the past 7 years. Many of those students, all of those students have an industrially recognised qualification. So more and more companies within Ireland and outside of Ireland are recognising the qualifications they're gaining. Okay, we do offer continuous support, both in groups and one-on-one for students in terms of employability skills. So the CV preparation, the job hunt, the interview skills, mock interviews. More and more companies come to us too when they're in recruiting. So companies will come to us and say, okay, we're looking for 3 people for this particular role. We will shortlist CVs from our students, and that's how our students, many of our students will get jobs. So we continually network with the companies to help our students, okay? So as I said, we've over 3.5 students successfully graduated in the last 7 years, and over 70% of our students are in jobs within 6 months of completion. Many of our students will get jobs while they're doing the programs, okay? And that's why we have online e-learning kind of support as well to help students to work as they're doing it. So the results of our programs, what makes our programs different is that the output is all of our graduates will have a knowledge of the pharmaceutical manufacturing, food manufacturing, medtech, formulations, etc. They'll all understand GMP. So if you worked previously in this type of manufacturing sector, you'll understand what GMP is, okay, which is good manufacturing practice. And one of the first things you will see on a job description often within this sector is knowledge of GMP or previous experience of working in a GMP environment. If you haven't worked in that sector, having a knowledge of it will really, really help you on your CV in terms of getting an interview. Okay, understanding quality risk, so on, okay, understanding utilities and facilities. So you might wonder, why is it so difficult to get into the sector if you haven't worked there previously? Well, if you take a simple concept with making a drug, say it's a simple aspirin, okay, it's really, really important that when you're making something like that, it could be life-threatening if it's not made correctly.
Okay, so there are very, very stringent processes around making medical devices, foods and pharmaceuticals. Okay, so all of our students will have an understanding of all the quality issues around that. Okay, and on top of that, then we have the layer of, we call it the employability skills, the softer skills. Now, I've worked very closely with IBEC in the last number of years. I've been visiting companies, at regular meetings with companies, and the one thing that many company managers will say now, yes, we are getting students with good technical skills, but the softer skills are missing. Okay, so the cultural awareness, the team working, they're able to present, and all of those we will add into our programs as well. As we call it the top layer of our programs. So our objective on all the courses is to upskill our students to get the career opportunities that they want. So we actually interview people for places on our programme, and that's the first step in your career development. So many people, as I said earlier, many people think, I need a white coat to work in this sector, and that's not necessarily true. Many people coming from a previous type of work situation will have a lot of transferable skills. And once we meet with individuals before they come on the programme, we'll help them to identify what those transferable skills are, and if we think they have a reasonable chance of getting a job following one of our courses or during one of our courses as well. Okay? So a little bit about the sector currently. As I said, they're very buoyant. So investments remain very buoyant right now. Okay, you can see many of the headlines. If you're at all tuned in to what's going on in the news, you will hear regular good news stories about Galway-based pharma company to create new jobs, Kerry developing a new innovation centre in Naas, new investments and state-of-the-art manufacturing facilities being built in Dublin. Okay, so the capital expenditure investment in the industry, it remains very, very active right now. You'll hear of some of the major players like BMS, Alexion, Regeneron, Pfizer, Bayer. They're all looking at major investments over the next 5 years. In actual fact, it is estimated that there's going to be an additional over 8,000 new jobs alone in the bio sector in the next 5 years. Now, the problem is there is a challenge there. The challenge for the companies is getting people with the right skills level. Okay, and that's why it's really, really important. If you're thinking about getting into the sector, you should look at maybe doing some type of upskilling program. So let's look at the pharma sector alone. Okay, it is in Ireland we've over 120 companies, pharmaceutical companies in Ireland. There are two major clusters. So we've one cluster here in Dublin, and we've one cluster in Cork, and then we've other little hotspots. So we have Sligo, Waterford, and Mayo. Okay. The pharma sector employs over 25,000 people directly, and is estimated another 25 indirectly. So it's a major, major employer in Ireland. We have 9 of the world's top 10 companies based here in Ireland. Okay, I know you all think that Dublin is the capital of Ireland, but actually Westport is another capital. Do you know why? What do we make in Westport and Elgin? Botox. Okay, so all the Botox throughout the world is made in Westport and Elgin. Okay, Pfizer down in Middleskiddy, what are they famous for? Viagra. Well done. Okay, so we have 2 major capitals and many more coming up behind them. Okay, and you'll recognise many of those names, I'm sure, as well. In terms of the medical device sector is becoming very buoyant as well. We now have 13 out of the top 15 companies worldwide based in Ireland, and we're seeing a large number of small indigenous companies coming up now in the medical device sector. So there are hubs in many universities, for example in National University of Galway, in UCD, and in Trinity. And again, if you're tuned in, you very often see that there's huge innovation and development going on in medical devices right now. One simple thing, I don't know if any of you know anybody with diabetes. Traditionally, people with diabetes had to inject themselves. Now there's a pump. Okay, and the pump will monitor the blood level or glucose level and automatically correct the amount of insulin that's delivered through the body. A major, major development. Stents as well. Boston Scientific are renowned for the stents, development of stents and so on in Ireland. So there are over 250 companies in the medical device sector, and that is increasing. And again, the medical device sector employs over 25,000 people. Okay, so a huge employer in Ireland. The food sector has over 50,000 people employed in it. And despite all the kind of negativity about Trump and Brexit, etc., it remains buoyant. And we can see Michael D. Higgins in Australia this week making more contacts for our export market as well. I don't know if you know that Ireland actually supplies China with 80% of its infant milk formula. Okay?
Hello. Oh,
So
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
But also to Asia, China, and so on. Actually, the food sector has the highest payroll of any of the sectors in Ireland. So if you're interested in the food sector, it is buoyant, there is huge demand, a lot of different types of roles in the food sector as well. So the future skills of the science-based industries. So there are more and more changes in the workplace taking us out of our comfort zones. And one major change we're seeing is global connectivity. So there are companies who could be based in Japan or working with Ireland, and with the use of the internet, we have connectivity going at all times. Smart machines, new media, and big data. I'm sure you're hearing big data all over the place. So we have a need to have a greater ability to adapt our environment. Okay? As I said before, pure academic technical skills are not sufficient for the future. We need to look at other skills outside of that. Okay? There's some kind of changing trends I'm sure you've heard too within the pharmaceutical sector. So for example, expiring patents. So manufacturers are now exploring kind of new avenues, looking at new emerging markets. You would see that in the food sector as well. There's quite a crossover between food and pharma now, because many of the food products we're making now have health benefits, like protein drinks being an example. Okay? So employers are always looking for people who can be creative as well, not just people who can do something. So innovation and having the ability to innovate is a part of many of our level 8 and master's programs as well. We have with smaller volumes, so I said more personalised medicines are coming on board as well, orphan drugs.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Well. And that's seen in the development of the biopharma sector. So we're moving into continuous manufacturing. So if you have an understanding of continuous manufacturing, it's something you're able to talk about in an interview as well if you're going for a job in some of these companies. Okay? So many big changes within the pharma sector. Now if you go back to our traditional view of upskilling, okay, or education, come back into maybe 50 years ago, people went to college or came out of school, got into a job, and a job was mainly for life. Okay? That has changed greatly. Okay? So might have taken one job, moved on to a similar job in a different company, but that was the extent of the movement. Pardon me. Now what's happening is we're seeing more and more job movement. In actual fact, many people could have 4 or 5 careers in their lives. Okay? So when I spoke earlier about transferable skills, if you previously worked, for example, in a semiconductor environment, you have a knowledge of manufacturing that can transfer right across into pharmaceutical, medical device, biopharma, and so on. Okay? So we have people who will come from one job, go into another job, they bring those skills into another job, and so on. Okay? So there's multiple learning environments, and there is a huge focus right now from the Irish government on lifelong learning for adults as well. So upskilling is a major part, and companies are very supportive to the people who are trying to upskill themselves. And we would see that in that we are invited in very often to come into companies to educate the current employees to bring them to the next level. So you may have somebody who's worked in a company at an entry-level position for 10 years, and they haven't got the skill sets to be a supervisor, so we're brought in then to deliver some skills to enable that person to develop within the company as well. So the obvious traditional skills to science-based roles were obviously science, manufacturing, quality, regulation, documentation, maintenance, calibration. You may recognise some of those. Okay? So they were traditionally what companies were looking for, and still are looking for, obviously. Okay? However, with the onset of changes to the market, okay, we now need additional skills. Okay? So the ability to make sense of what's expressed or connect things together. The big data, the meaningful analysis of big data, okay, and so on. So that leads us, okay, to people who are able to operate in different cultural settings. So that is really, really important when it comes to working. Working productively to drive engagement to achieve results is part of a virtual team. So that virtual knowledge is really important as well. being able to work in multiple roles, and that's why people come in with transferable skills from other sectors can be really, really good at working in multiple roles because they have multiple competencies. And as I said earlier, creative thinking to solve problems, creative thinking to innovate new ideas, okay? And having a getting things done attitude. I would often say to my students, the most important thing in getting a job is your attitude, okay? And I recently heard a major employer working in the pharmacy sector talk about, and is relevant to what the previous speaker was talking about, when she is interviewing for people to come in to work in a pharmacy, she owns a chain of pharmacy shops, okay? She will walk through the waiting room and she'll just watch who smiles at her. And that person will probably have the job before anybody. Because, as she indicated, you can teach anybody technical skills, but you cannot teach them attitude, okay? So we do culture and develop a culture of having a positive attitude as well, which is really important. So now, some of the new ideas or new kind of future skills that employers are looking for within the sector: sense-making, social intelligence, novel adaptive thinking, cross-cultural competency, computational thinking, new media literacy, being able to work in multidisciplines, having a design mindset, and virtual collaboration. So there are many of the aspects that you would need to become familiar with, as well as some of the traditional skills here as well. So just a very brief overview of the courses we do. So we're helping you to upskill. Some of our courses are quite short upskilling programs that will help you transfer into the sector. Others will help you move from a level 6 right up through to master's level. So if you're familiar with this, and this is probably particularly important for people who've come in from other countries to live in Ireland, we have a national framework of qualifications. So when we finish Leaving Cert, we're at level 5. Okay? And normally the first 2 years of college after level 5 brings you to a higher certificate, or it used to be called an advanced certificate, at level 6. Then a year after that, you can get an ordinary bachelor's degree, moving on to a level 8 honours bachelor's degree or a higher diploma, moving on to a master's degree, and then the highest level is level 10. So we're starting at level 6, level 7, level 8, level 9, level 10. So if your qualification is not from Ireland, there is a system to get your qualification checked to ensure it's at what level of equivalency here it's at here in Ireland. As I said, some of our programs, so we have a level 6 minor award in pharmaceutical and medical device operations. Last year we won that in 8 centres throughout Ireland, including Cork, Galway, Clonmel, Waterford, Sligo, so on. Okay, it's a fairly short, intensive program. It's aimed at people who haven't a previous qualification in science. So you may have a Leaving Cert or a trade qualification. For example, you could be a mechanic or a plumber or something like that, and you haven't previously gone to college. It's aimed at that. Or other people have come in with maybe they have a level 8 in, say, philosophy, okay? So if your degree is coming from something that's non-scientific, you might have to start back at a level 6. We have an equivalent level 6 minor award in food science. Moving on to our level 8, the award I mentioned earlier in pharmaceutical and medical device manufacturing. That's a short 6-month program. We have a level 8 higher diploma in food science and technology, a master's in pharmaceutical manufacturing, and a master's in food business and management technology. All of those courses are run in conjunction with ITT Dublin, and they're focused on the manufacturing end of the sector. We also run a number of pharmaceutical business operation type courses in conjunction with Griffith College Dublin. So we have a level 7 BA in pharmaceutical business operations, moving on to a level BA, and from that you can move on to doing an MSc in pharmaceutical business, in pharmaceutical data analytics, and we have a postgraduate diploma in medical device technology. So as I said, we have a course roadmap. You might have somebody coming here at Leaving Cert, moving on to level 6, on to level 7, down to level 8, and up to a level 9. Okay? And that's the progress that people can make within a very short period of time through Upskill. Now, as I mentioned earlier, why we need qualifications to work within the sector. Well, as I said, these sectors are 100% regulated, okay? Everything is documented, everything is verified, everything is validated, okay, for obvious reasons, but the health and safety of the products are vital, okay? So once you have an understanding of the documentation, so quality assurance, validation systems, and you have a knowledge of that, and you can talk about it at industry level, it really, really helps in making your career go into the sector. I won't talk too much about this because I think the previous speakers have really said what I need to see here. The work preparation module, which is part of all of our programs, is essential. So looking at this, firstly deciding on roles. There's no point in applying for a role that firstly it won't fit you, okay, or you won't be happy in it within 5 years, okay. Deciding on a role that's relevant, is a good fit for you, and that you have a reasonable chance of getting into. Identifying your competencies. So you may have previous competencies and so on. Then getting your CV right. Now, one CV does not fit all. So you must tailor a CV, obviously, for the job, and your cover letter equally. So looking at the best places to job search. Surprisingly, probably only about 70% of jobs are actually advertised. Okay? Many companies won't go through Indeed.ie, or may not necessarily go through a recruitment agency. If they have contacts, or you have contacts, you might hear about a job. So networking is really, really important as well. Interview skills, part of all of our programs, and networking skills and coaching support as well. That's just a sample of some of the companies where our students, our past students are working in. I said that's only a very, very small selection. We have really good feedback as well. I mean, as you know, most of the students say that once they have found a job, they realise that the program was, very specific and relevant to the industry, okay? And most students will find re-entering the jobs market very, very quickly, okay? Our students will also say that our programs are very recognised by industry, okay? So what makes us unique, I suppose, is we have industry-led education. We focus a lot on student career advancement. Many of our lecturers have extensive industrial experience, and that really helps with the networking aspect as well. So it may be your lecturer that will help you get a job as well, or help you network within the sector. Okay? The fact that we have our own in-house R&D division, which I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of contacts in the pharma sector as well. So, and that, I suppose, results in our 70% employment result as a result for a program. So we really have a good track record. If you want to come and talk to us, we have a stand talking about our new courses. We have really good feedback as well from employers who have taken our students, okay? Again, just a short selection. I believe that the presentation is going to be sent out to everybody, is that correct? So you can read through that, I won't bore you with the detail of it. Okay, and that'll take me to questions. Am I okay time-wise?
Yeah, fine. Questions from the floor, young lady here.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear you. Return to work program, yes. So all of our programs are aimed at helping you to upskill, okay? Now there are two divisions to it. Some of our programs are springboard funded. That means if you're currently living in Ireland and unemployed, you can do a springboard program to help you return to work. In other situations, we would have people who are working in one sector but decided they want to change career, okay? So the returning to work program, all of our programs have that focus, and that's why we interview people for places on the program. So we identify immediately what the purpose of the program is for each individual. So if it's return to employment, we will focus on helping you get employment. If it's changing your career within the company, we'll help you to develop your career path within the company as well, to identify what the next steps are. Does that explain that? No.
Okay, other questions? Yes.
Cost of course, well, really, you know, it's like any course. They range from, say, for example, if you're doing an accredited program, they range from 4,000 upwards. You know, so a master's program typically would be something between 6 and 8, give or take. You know, but each program has a different, depending on the duration and depending on the level.
Okay. Awesome, that was fascinating. I was interested when you said that Botox is made here. I was talking to a friend of mine just outside who has had Botox, and I told her it was manufactured in Ireland.
It's a fantastic facility. I've been there recently.
And she's used it, but she didn't seem surprised.
She didn't seem surprised. No, absolutely. So
I'll keep working it. I'm just workshopping it at the moment, okay? Orla, thank you very much. Please put your hands together for Orla Callan.